Okay, so I'm going to call to order this second monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees for second monthly meeting for May. We have two trustees who are not present at the moment who will be joining us shortly. Any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda? I am going to change the order of the agenda a little bit. We are going to move a couple of items up and then go to privilege of the floor after that. So the first item that I'd like to move up.
One thing on the order, it occurred to me that I think it's worth considering not doing trustee, the regular reports for this second meeting, just streamline things. I wasn't sure what people thought about that, but to me, I think the monthly report is adequate, and then we can just have everything for this second meeting just be updated.
Yeah, those items are not meant to indicate a report. It's just a spot for everyone in case they have something that wasn't in the business. Or,
very good.
And something specific to the department.
Well, that's fine.
So, case in point, the treasurer, who is not with us this evening, has a budget modification that she needs done. This is a budget modification to the year in which we currently sit, the 2021-2022 budget year. We had allocated, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we had allocated a small amount of funds to be placed in the capital reserves within the water and sewer accounts. Due to those funds running lean on fund balance, hence the need to increase water rates, the budget modification is to zero out the reserving that we had intended to do in the current budget year before this budget year ends in 8 days. So I would entertain a motion to approve the budget modification, modifying water and sewer reserve allocations for the current budget year, changing those reserving allocations to 0.
So moved.
Second. Most of this is partly what we is this that we would normally put money here and we would put it in the reserve at the end of the year, or we're not doing that now?
So we can, when we budget for monies to be put in the reserve, we can do it at any time during the year. Vicky used to, in the general fund, do it early. Now we've kind of waited to do it later. The general fund is fine, so she'll be moving those reserve amounts this week. Water and sewer are a little light. So the question was, do we move those amounts? And then if we wish we didn't, then we've got to go back and do some financial gymnastics to move it back out. Or do we cancel this year's reserving amounts? And it was only, say, $27,000 to $30,000 in that range. So with the water rate changes and sewer rate changes upcoming, I didn't think it would make a huge difference. Those reserve accounts are relatively healthy. We want to build them up even more. So what we budgeted at budget time for this upcoming budget year, we'll have to reevaluate come next spring once the water rate increases have kicked in, see how healthy those accounts look.
Now, just to note that when we did our budget, we were looking at the actual totals that did not include these numbers. So it probably doesn't change much long term. But that's fine.
But it's certainly motivation to get those water and sewer rates bumped to where we probably should have bumped them a few years ago, but held off.
Yeah.
I mean, I know when you're doing the projections, I want to say I saw a projection without changing rates that had us kind of getting to 0 with next year or so. So yeah, we are. It's better for us to be a little conservative for the next year or two to kind of get to this point. A better place after that. After the changes come through.
Good. Well, then, all in favor of approving the budget modification as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No one left to oppose, so that passes. And then the second item, Ben, I believe we have a request to hire an EMT as well as some
Yeah.
stipends.
The stipends I'd like to discuss more.
Okay.
But the provisional hire is someone that Joel has spoken with, would like to hire as a part-time EMT. He did say that he has an approved application. Tammy, do you have an approved application from civil service for Talik? So with that, I move that we hire Talik Lacey as a part-time EMT effective immediately at the prevailing wage.
Second, and a second. Any questions or comments? Have you met Talik?
I haven't. This was news to me. But I think Joel and I have talked at length about the sort of mission to just hire as many per diem EMTs as possible. That, I think because the per diem, we have more discretion in terms of not only hiring and firing, but more importantly, scheduling. So hire first and sort of see how things go, give them an opportunity. Joel has really made a robust kind of onboarding process at this point. So I'm pretty confident that we'll have there's enough time for evaluation as part of that process that I think we're in really good shape. I honestly have not asked to be part of the interview process because at this point it feels, I just want it to like the faster, quicker we can hire, especially for DMs, the better. So we'll see. That's it's definitely the kind of thing that could bite us later. If someone is really bad, but again, because it's per DMs, I feel confident in the strategy.
Any other thoughts then? All right, and all in favor of hiring Talik Lacey as a per diem EMT, we say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose. Any department specific items?
I don't have anything specific, although it is worth re-emphasizing that I think Joel's work on the onboarding that I was just talking about is really, I feel very optimistic about the effect it'll have just in terms of, especially department culture and trying to really mold the people that we hire into sort of part of a team as opposed to just, here you go, figure it out. But I don't really have anything specific. I think that's just worth emphasizing for kudos to Joel.
Okay, good. Trying to give our trustees as much time as possible to get here so they don't miss any comments.
I could definitely. I can vent. I can just talk.
I've got.
Yeah.
Give me, well, I can talk about the words.
It's the NASA duck, but apparently it belongs to a child who attended the race. Ben Guthrie thought it was just a lark, so tossed it up. So it's gonna find its home. Give me coffee.
I've already found a couple ducks.
You have?
Yes, I think my children have the most fun because of that race.
Okay, so we did jump through a couple of things. The budget modification,
Okay.
hired sewer, we hired a part-time EMT, which brings us full circle back to our public comment period. So if either of you have anything that you would like to mention or address to the board, now's your opportunity.
Okay, all right, well, I think I'm unknown to all of you. My name is, excuse me.
It's Judy Hardesty.
And I'm here, probably you already know why. I brought lunch. Can I use this?
Sure, absolutely.
This podium. This is what is currently across the street from my house, taken from my driveway.
It's on Seneca Street,
I live on Second Street.
Second Street.
I live
King-
King Corner from
King.
the old Bowers Fuel.
King Street.
King Street.
King Street, what did I say?
You said second, third.
Oh,
You went-
now it's
you went-
fine.
you went back in time.
Yeah,
John.
well, I blame you. Okay. All right, and here's another, it's these dumpsters are about 4 to 6 times as large as the usual Casella dumpsters, just so you know.
Okay.
This is the daytime picture, I assume, because most of the trucks are gone.
No, those are the trucks.
Great.
I'm pretty sure these were all taken at the same time. I believe that was taken. Just don't remember, in April. Okay, I don't remember which time of day. Now, that was taken from my next door neighbor's vantage. And I should say that I'm representing her, Joy Adams, but Joy is quite an elderly lady and she has, right now she's suffering from some fairly painful medical issues that are limiting her mobility.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
So, what has happened with, this is a gradual build-up. Started out with, across the street, there was a diseased tree. The property that used to be ours is now owned by KG's property care. And KJ's went in to remove this diseased tree. That took quite a long time. The tree got chopped into pieces, and then another tree got chopped. And pretty soon there were big trucks carrying the lumber away, knocking down actual boughs from the tree in my driveway. And it was mostly it was happening during COVID. I have to say the COVID was not really very good to me. And I had reason not to be issuing complaints about what was going on. And I also thought, well, eventually the diseased trees will be gone, it'll be good. And, but instead, piles of debris taken from other people's properties started arriving in dump trucks. And you can see what's there. More piles have emerged behind and behind and behind. And it's a mixture of gravel, dirt, that logs from cutting down trees because that's their specialty. And the dirt, when they remove the trunks, and it's filled with roots. And it's, and the trucks, which were sort of manageable when they moved in, they've been very successful. And they have added a lot of trucks. And across the street from my driveway are often parked 2 18-foot trailers with the trucks that pull the 18-foot trailers. It's unacceptable. So I went to visit Tom Myers. And he's been offering me some advice and some help. But it seems that he doesn't have any authority to deal with this. So I would like to give you these, pass these along. If you just look at these are the ordinances that govern KG's property and my property. And my next door neighbor is in a residential area. So if you look on the last page here, outdoor storage. There shall be no outdoor storage of rubbish in connection with any of the uses permitted. This is not even thinking about the violations of the uses, just piles of rubbish. And I am being told that the legal advice being offered the village is that because he's been doing this for such a long time, he should just go ahead and do it. But it has been a creep. It hasn't, the piles of rubbish are new, and they actually, they extend pretty far. He has only about 3/4 of an acre. And on this 3/4 of an acre, he's got his 2 squirrels, the 2 18-foot trailers with the trucks, 10 trucks at least, numerous other earth-moving equipment. In addition to these piles, there are piles of gravel. We're not talking about little piles. We're talking about big piles. And
Judy, remind me, is the gravel, that's clean, that's clean, like piles, not like the detritus?
it's in a different location.
Yeah, okay.
But there are some piles of gravel mixed in with. But, you know, he told me himself when he takes the dirt from other places. And, you know, that dirt doesn't even necessarily come from Tompkins County.
Sure.
So I was told that it was not known whether he was governed by the current ordinances or by the previous ordinances, and there are no records. So I was told that I could find some records, so I found a record. I found a photograph taken for the assessment, dated by the assessment office. And this was dated 6 to 8 weeks after the current ordinances went into effect. Got a bunch of those too. Or no, just one. So, so my neighbor and I are, this is the way I look at it. When you purchase a property, and that property is governed by certain ordinances and regulations and towns, this is and that, then that is a sort of a contract with the, in this case, with the village, and which the village is actually the people, that's who the village is. And in his case, and my case, because I have a business also, maintaining those compliance with those ordinances is a cost of doing business. But what's happening is he's passing that cost of doing business onto my neighbors and myself, because this is definitely affecting our property values. I cannot imagine who might want to purchase my property now. My property used to have a nice view of Little White Church, the lawn, and then it became a soil testing laboratory, very quiet, very lovely. And then the gas station, which was great to have there, turned into this thing. It's just getting bigger and bigger. And I didn't start by going to the zoning office. I started by talking with him. Joy and I went and talked with him. You know, here I am, results of that talk. So, and one day I woke up and there was these giant dumpsters. He had actually excavated into the hill to put these giant dumpsters. I mean, they're big. They're not the usual. So on that little property, there are now 6 dumpsters all on the street. So it's a violation of all those trucks parked on the street. It's frightening. I can't imagine. My place is a small place. There's always a place for a young family. Young family doesn't want to move in where their little child can be encounter 10 trucks and, you know. And then of course, there's the visual impact of having to look at it. And it's a little, I will say, disconcerting that his business is landscaping. Yeah. So that's what I have to say. I want to know, why. Why is it that I am being told that he is likely to be able to continue doing this? Nobody has asked us as witnesses when he did it. You know, it's just, there's some kind of an assumption on the part of the legal department that we're not trustworthy, I guess. I don't know. When did you see me last with a complaint? Yeah, I've been here for 20 years, so.
So you'll have to give me some time to look into this. It's my understanding this is still an open item with zoning and code enforcement. So you will have to, we will have to let that play out. So just, and not to in any way, shape or form insult your intelligence if you know what I'm about to say, but in the interest of due diligence, just to say it, the prescribed process by state law, when there is a complaint or concern about either code enforcement or zoning and any potential concerns about whether those regulations are being followed, must go through the zoning and code office, and the village board cannot step in front of that.
Oh, okay, well, I've already been to the code office.
So as long as that case is my understanding, he's sitting right behind you, but my understanding is that that's still an open item.
There's still an open
Still an
item.
open item. So we should let that process play out. I would suggest that any belief that you might have that our legal counsel is suggesting that the property owner has no responsibilities is not accurate. So let's let the code and zoning process piece play out.
I'm just not sure that the legal person involved has looked at these pictures. You know, I mean,
And that's why I think it's really important that we let the process follow its course.
yeah, and we have that is we are planning to file official complaints. Haven't filled out the forms yet.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the forms yet.
No, I would say that this is something that will be certainly thoroughly reviewed, and then let's let the
That would be good.
entirety of the process play out.
That would be good, because we like to think that, I mean, everybody on our street just follows the rules,
Yeah,
you know, and that seems right. So, I thank you.
yeah. Thanks for bringing
You're welcome.
it to the board.
Jules, do you have any public comments for me?
I can hear better here than I can there. So there's a public little spate of time at the end of the meeting.
Okay,
So why don't you all roll along with the meeting, and if there's a little spate of time at the end for like 5 minutes or maybe 8, because I don't talk very much, I'm very shy person. So right at the end, maybe. Is that all right?
sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to, I was hoping Keith would be here. let's move on to old business, which is stretch code and all that. Either of you take the reins. Were you going to introduce anything formally tonight?
I'm, to be honest with you, not sure. I think I wasn't sure if questions were answered. It seemed like you had some lasting questions that maybe weren't answered at the last meeting. I'm honestly not sure where we stand.
Yeah, those lasting,
So,
I had
I'll leave that
the
to you.
same lasting questions which have not been answered, but I didn't know if we were going to run the process in parallel. Anyway, I thought that's what we had.
Right, because there were several steps between here and there, so we could get it going.
I'm not sure that it matters anymore. Having missed the last
Yeah.
meeting,
Right.
Jim, I'm not sure that we can do it, but that said, and Tammy, you are listening, I hope. My understanding is that we need to declare our intent to be lead agency, and that's the first step. We could also simultaneously introduce the local law.
I think the natural order of things would be you would want to introduce the law before you tried to declared your intent to be lead agency on, well, nothing. Right? You got to have the local law introduction prior to. At least that's my interpretation.
Okay, well, that's news, but they can be simultaneous essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's the law which requires seeker.
Right, yes.
So if we're going to run seeker on something, we have to have an object on which to run it.
Oh, sure, yeah, but we're talking a largely
Exactly.
semantic difference, right? Like,
Right, we can do it simultaneously.
so the law is in the Dropbox for last time. It is titled, well, I can just read it if you'd like. It's very short. Or we can just all look at it in Dropbox. Is there a preference?
You know, title is fine, but lots of time to shred the details of the law along the way.
So this would be local law 2, titled the local law amending local law 2 of 2011, which was the administration and enforcement of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. As discussed, the basic function of the law is to change the definition of the uniform code within that law so that the stretch code is then triggered in the case of a major renovation or new build.
Okay.
That is that.
And so you're introducing that for consideration?
Yep.
Okay, Tammy, we will consider that formally introduced.
Yes, sir.
We're in the Dropbox.
It's in the last meeting and it's 0. I named it 0 New York Stretch Adoption Local Law.
I see that under 411, the 411 meeting. I don't see that elsewhere. Oh, no, sorry, it's in 59 there. It is.
Yeah.
Uh,
It notably added at 8:31, if you look at the title on that. Which was, what, 15, 20 minutes later. Anyway, and then the other piece is I move that we, actually, I don't know, is that a resolution, Tammy? How does that work to declare our intent?
Yeah, you should do part 1 of the seeker, do the declaration with a resolution. And then we would send out the notices to the interested agencies. So I would recommend that we do that at the June meeting.
You're gonna need to do part 1 of the EAF.
Yeah.
Is there a reason we can't do that right now? My understanding was that the holdup here is the 30-day period required to review the lead agency declaration. And that we could do that immediately because that's the bottleneck.
My inclination is that the first part of the EAF should be done prior to the the lead agency with a resolution. I don't know that's something we can just do on the fly, but I'll leave that up to you.
Let me check something real quick here.
And our attorney is out of town until next week.
Roden, I'm gonna let you check this.
Yeah, let me check it out.
I'm gonna bring out.
I mean, since it's a document, the first part of the EAF is really like, I think 3 or 4 lines, just what is the project? Who is the project, right? Dates and that kind of thing. So yeah, we could definitely do that right now. But I don't know how in-depth you would want the intent to be lead agency resolution. That would be your decision.
How in depth we would want.
Meaning how many where thou art thou or thou, right?
I mean, my intent would be to say, whereas we intend to pass local law 2 of 2022. Therefore be it resolved that we are lead agency.
Yeah, it's gonna be more than that though. So I'm looking at the resolution to declare lead agency for the comp plan.
Right. It's generally pretty lengthy.
It was not overly lengthy, but it was.
I believe for the comp plan, didn't we do them simultaneously?
Deliberations.
That's also,
The resolution we did at the same time as the resolution to declare lead agency, we did at the same time as we did part 1 of the EAF, which I'm looking at right now. It says.
Do you want to send out that first part with this intention to other?
right, so that piece is exceedingly simple. I mean, the part 1 for this is
Yeah.
like half a sentence.
This is unlisted, right?
Yeah, it's unlisted. I mean, this is a non-issue in terms of secret.
Yeah.
The only
The
thing
document.
is the procedural questions.
Yeah.
Yes, however, we still need the completed part 1, even though everything will be checked no,
Right.
you have the actual document completed.
Yeah, because that has to go with the notice to the agents, the other interested.
Let me see if I can find this one piece here. Go back in time. This part 1. Right, so part 1, the part we have to complete is the actual description of the proposed action, which is a narrative. The rest is just fill in the blank, name, address, number, contact info, application date. We have to identify the other agencies that we're going to notify of our intent. So that would be Village Planning Board, ZBA, Town of Ulysses, Thomas County Planning Board, New York State Ag and Markets. C1 and C2, simple, C3. Project details will be blank. It's gonna be very similar to this comp plan, part 1, actually.
Right.
I mean, if y'all want to do it, I can pull up a fillable form and we can do it right now.
I have it filled out actually, so if we
Oh,
want
you
to
do?
do it, we
Great.
can do it. I mean, we have to obviously read through it and fill it out together, but I mean, I have the narrative stuff.
I think we could do it. Keith just pulled in. I don't know that is relevant. Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to go along with the consensus of the board. I think my general preference on anything that is going to affect land use and property owners is to make sure we have everything drafted and available at the time, disseminated for public viewing with the agenda packet. That's what we did for every step of the comp plan. Along with the drafted resolution. That would be my procedural preference.
I am thankfully indifferent.
You mean before we complete part one?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
That's what
Well, then let's do that.
previous.
If we're not up against a deadline, we just want to do this because it's seemingly a good time. We have 2 outstanding questions. And then let's just be prepared to definitely do it. Is there a reason not to? Is there a reason not to follow the way we've always done it, which is giving ample notice that we're going to do this and talk about it, put it on the agenda? And give time to do that next meeting, give time for those 2 questions, any questions to be answered.
I think the argument against is that we've been talking about it for so long, but I mean, if that's the general preference, I'm not going to push. I feel like I did my pushing and if the will of the board is not to carry this thing through, I'm not going to just be the only one pushing. I guess is what I'm
I mean, I
saying.
think
So
that-
if there's a general feeling that we should do it,
I am strongly in favor of doing this. But I agree, now that there is diminishing likelihood that we would get the money adopted with it, then I think I would prefer having the short data filled out and a resolution as part of the agenda packet and have it available so we can review it. I mean, it is fairly straightforward, but I do also still see this taking us half an hour, 45 minutes to fill in together.
Sure.
I prefer to see it done in advance, but that is in no way a knock against my desire to see this move forward.
sure. I'm all right with
Yeah, I'm on that side, because again, we always have. I think, there have been, I feel like with comp plans and zoning codes and things like that, and even reviews of site plan reviews, like, we could have done it, but well, let's just wait for the next meeting and make sure everyone knows, probably no one will comment or come, but it feels like definitely covering all the bases.
Ben Carver. Hey, Ben.
I'm listening.
Can you
We
hear
can
me?
hear.
What we could do, if you're gonna do that at the June meeting, then after 7 days, I could contact everybody of the interested agencies and see if I can get that response back in that 7 days. With it being a document, I don't think that would be a problem. So if we get responses back before that, right, we wouldn't have to wait for the 30 days if we hear from everybody before the 30 days.
Sure. My understanding is that we can also do an uncoordinated review, which for something like this makes sense. But I think the bottom line here for me is that I'm going to need to talk with Guy and figure it out, because I feel like the ground is shifting. So I'm going to do that between now and then, and we'll move forward then.
He'll be back next Tuesday.
Very good.
And certainly if we do the more formal seeker process, then we're covering every base.
Sure.
We do have Tom here. I don't know if it's a good time to segue. I know there's general questions beyond procedure that we've had that we'd like to, anything have Tom weigh in on.
Yeah, so I have 2 questions for Tom and then anything else that you want to add. So really, that part's open-ended. My 2 questions are, the adoption of the stretch code will increase your workload by, fill in the blank. It could be 0. Or it could be, we need to hire 3 people. I have no idea. That's why the question. And then the second question is it possible to quantify when or if stretch code would impact an existing property owner's ability to renovate within the home? At what point does stretch code impact any renovation? Is it at the point of putting on an addition? Is it at the point of replacing the front door and being
Well,
intentionally
I'll answer the easy one
exaggerated?
first, if I may.
Sure.
Your second question is very easily quantifiable. Either 50% of the work area, if the work area is more than 50% of the total house square footage.
Okay.
Or the value of the house property is increased by more than 50%. It took some digging to get that, but I was able to triangulate it and have it confirmed from a few different areas, but the existing building code has 3 different levels of work, 1, 2, and 3 of all things. And 3 is the highest, and part of the requisite to get into level 3 is that 50% number. And it can be 50% of the current appraised value. If somebody, property owner is concerned, they can have the property reappraised, and that would be fine. Or you can go with what ImageMate says. My experience with ImageMate right now is they're woefully low on their assessments of property values.
Don't tell
But
people,
that's pretty clear.
don't tell the people that have gotten their assessments increased.
Yeah,
But you're right. They are.
But yeah, you look at sales prices and you look at these, it's, they're way off.
Okay, so that's helpful.
So the first one,
Wait, Tom, actually, can I
Oh,
interject
sorry.
quickly? So just as a clarifying point, it's worth emphasizing that this is Tom's interpretation, which he is empowered and would need to make. But this is not something that's written in the code or written in the stretch code. The stretch code refers to a major renovation or new building project.
right.
So this is Tom's interpretation of when that would be applicable, which he, again, is empowered to do and would need to do. It is, the reason I mention is that it's also something we could change. So various municipalities have by local law defined what a major renovation
major
is. So if that's something that we're not comfortable with, another municipality, I'm forgetting who it was, changed it to 75%, changed that threshold. So this is something that we can change if we want to. I actually don't think we should. I think that's fine. And it's something that you're using elsewhere in the code. So it makes a lot of sense, but I just want to emphasize what that is. I think the one place where it does become relevant for us is if Tom leaves or if someone else is in that role, then we have someone else's discretion interpreting this code. So maybe, obviously that applies to the rest of the code as well, right? So it's a pretty big deal. This is just a tiny little subset of that concern, but it's worth emphasizing.
So does
Just
that
to bear in
mean,
mind.
does that mean that a future code enforcement officer could choose to interpret the phrase major renovation as being something less than 50%?
They could interpret it, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that you have wide interpretive capacity. I think in this and in all parts of the.
I don't think in that, work area is pretty well defined.
Right, but there's no connection between major renovation as a definition, as a term, and the definition you just provided, right? What you provided was a level 3 definition,
Correct.
which is different than major renovation, and you make connecting those dots is a discretionary choice.
Yeah, well, major renovation is verbiage from the stretch code, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, and I haven't found a nice set of definitions in the stretch code. So obviously I always default to where I can get a definition. And I guess a different code officer could interpret it differently. Because there is a wide allowance for discretion in some stuff. I think that one would be hard to stand up to any kind of scrutiny. If somebody said, oh, it's 25% makes a major, okay, show me where in the existing building code or wherever in our code books that can be supported. And when I was doing the research, I'm constantly trying to find ways where it won't go the way I think it should go, or I hope it would go, just to back check basically.
All right, go on. You were gonna answer that.
Well,
First
actually,
question, second.
I think the first question would be easy to answer as long as you can answer my question. How many major projects do you think the village will see in the coming year? And then I can tell you how much extra workload there will be. My thought is in the single-digit percentage of extra work. With the stretch code, there's what I see here is just a higher degree of record keeping, systems confirmation that the system is going to work this way. And that's not me doing that confirmation. It's me hounding some third party to make sure that they done it correctly and submitted the materials in the format that NYSERDA wants. If we were getting a lot of bigger models, if we're getting a lot of new construction, it would increase my workload by a lot, but we had 2 new houses last year. And maybe there'll be another one this year. I haven't seen anything about it. You might even know better than I. There's lots of it sold, but I don't see a huge amount of extra work associated with it. And I've talked to some builders, and I was surprised to get their response where a lot of us look at the building code as a minimum standard where you can have health and safety and structures that are built repaired, but not going way over the top, so it's still accessible to people with limited income. The stretch code isn't that. It's going right up there where it becomes unaffordable for folks with lower income. Now, are folks with lower income going to be able to do a major remodel on a residence in the village of Trumansburg? Probably not. But I think it is worth considering.
Which I think is also what fueled those questions, that second question, what does major mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like, I mean, increasing your square footage by 50% is pretty significant.
Well, it's not increasing it. It's work area is like in a remodel. If you're going to
Oh,
do
it
this room,
encompasses more than 50%.
so you whatever the square footage of this room is versus the rest of the building. You don't necessarily have to be adding something.
Okay.
Thank you. Probably go more to the value as opposed to the square footage. It'd be rare to see an addition that's bigger than half the existing structure.
Okay,
Or is it building?
thank you.
Tom, have you seen the cost projections that NYSERDA shared? Because that does not mesh at all with the representation of their model, right? I mean, we're talking, that's not surprising. I'm gonna misquote these, but we're talking like hugely different. I mean, theirs was maybe a cost increase in the single digits in terms of percent.
Yeah.
And it's what you're describing is more like doubling the cost or something. I mean, can you be a little more clear about what you're saying here?
For remodels, I don't think doubling the cost. I think it's in the low 10s. I was talking about the increase in my level of work.
Well, but you described this as making it prohibitive to do improvements on a house for someone of low income. Can you explain what you mean by that?
That's not how I understood what you said. What I understood Tom was saying was that given building costs today, building any new house or doing any major remodel, regardless of what code is going to be applied, is cost prohibitive to folks with low income.
Oh, I see. All right. So not
It's all damn expensive. It's all really damn expensive. So which code is applied to it? And correct me if you meant something completely different, but whichever code you apply to it is not going to be the difference between a low to moderate income individual affording it or not.
Oh, okay. All right. Excuse me. Sorry.
That's okay. That's why you got to talk about stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
It's an odd situation. You know, this is thrown at us 2 years ago, I think. And,
contractors that I know that I've talked to recently, both renovation and new build are between $250 and $300 a square foot right now. And they're booking out into the summer of 23. So between the demand and the material costs, it's all expensive. I'm glad I did my kitchen in 2018.
So it's always been my stance, not always, but for quite a while now, that if there's a compelling reason for the village to adopt the stretch code, go for it. The compelling to me would be, we're going to have some financial gain for it, that we can assist some folks with something or boost another project. But if it's just getting on board and getting the braggarts or, you know, some green thing about it, it doesn't matter to me at all. Obviously, I don't vote on it. But I don't think my workload's going to increase to some horrendous amount, given what I see coming across my desk. maybe the Carvers will decide to go on this big, do 60% of their house.
Definitely in the works.
Have to do heat recovery on their drain plumbing.
Other than the phrase major renovation, is there anything that immediately comes to mind that you think should be better defined in the stretch code that we might want to define by local laws and would apply to the village?
Yeah, I understand there's a capacity for the municipalities to further define or add or subtract things. Boy, it's a big can of worms. We could get Guy on it and have a 180-page document.
I'm not looking to tweak the code itself. I'm just thinking if there are references to items or terms where you think there should be less wide open interpretation.
That you personally.
There are some
observed.
optional things in here that's not horrible, but I think as long as they stay optional, we're fine. I highlighted it. If this is interesting at all, or if you think it's relevant.
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of the term major renovation. I think it might be something this board wants to discuss,
Well,
whether we define that for
maybe
ourselves.
just that in itself, define the definition for major renovation, either take what's from existing building code or have Guy write up something.
Well, and I think, Ben, that's what you suggested when you mentioned other municipalities had put in there, that means 75%.
So the way I saw it executed, and again, I wish I could remember where this was, but was just a separate local law that defined.
What made, oh, okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't complicated. We could also build it into the local law we just introduced, would be one way to do it, right? So that this would be triggered
Okay,
in this case, but I think, I don't know if there's pros and cons to one or the other, to be honest with you. I think simplicity's sake tells me that it would be better in this law, but I honestly don't know if the implications are the same or different. That would be a Guy question.
You have a couple of items of particular interest within the code, or?
Well, the things that are, what I understand to be not mandatory. So there are things listed here that are mandatory, but rainwater heat recovery units, where they want you to be able to recover heat from drain pipes. You have your standard 3 or 4 inch schedule 40 PVC, water runs down at, hot bath would be the biggest one. Some constructor is supposed to be able to pull hot heat BTUs from this pipe and reuse it. But if you look at PVC, really isn't a great transmitter of energy. The system would have to be kicked on by a drain opening or releasing. You can't just have something there running all the time. You would probably have to have a coil to circulate something akin to antifreeze glycol that will pick up and hold heat well, circulate that, go to a heat exchanger. The heat exchanger would bring the heat to the room or to another device. Every time you add a step, your efficiency goes down and down and down. I see that being an expensive system to install and maintain for minimal the advantage.
But that's in the optional category, yes.
So it's an optional one.
See, I think those are the kinds of little tidbits that are going to be important for someone like myself to know which is optional. Because I can immediately see, and I say this knowing full well we're live streaming this, but I can immediately see someone hearing that the village is thinking about adopting the stretch code and saying, well, it's going to require me to.
Well, my first read on it was, oh my gosh, they're gonna make us do this. Because it's not clear. And you read through it and there's sections that are marked mandatory. But the ones that aren't mandatory, I asked the question at one of the trainings, does that mean these are optional? Well, yeah, I said, well, why is it optional?
right.
That would be too simple. But the document does require close reading. That's one good thing about having Guy being our attorney, because he writes very long, very dense statements with lots of great information in them. But if you just scan through it, you miss a lot. So I've got a lot of practice reading this stuff.
Okay. Anything else in particular you wish to share? Or?
I think that's about it. You know, if anybody wants to talk to me sometime about any particular revelation they have, I keep a hard copy, I make marks on it, like everything I do. Happy to talk energy. I like energy. I like saving energy. You know, the increases in the ceiling requirements is really good. You know, air infiltration, and they're talking about lowering the air changes per hour. You know, the blower door test, reducing that again from 3 to I think it's 1.5. So that's pretty major. But of course, that's all heat recovery ventilators are required after that, because type of the house, the greater the importance to have fresh air come in. Unless you have kids, I just open the doors all the time.
Because they think it's a barn.
So, but yeah, that's about all that I think is relevant to what I'm here to help with.
Any questions for Tom? Other than mine. Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Good evening. See you, Jules.
Behave yourself, Thomas.
Come on.
So I will make sure that's on the agenda
Yeah,
then
you're right.
for June 13. If you want to make sure that the part 1 and the resolution are prepped.
Yeah, I'll plan to meet with Guy.
Okay, any other items of old business? Any items of new business?
No.
Jules, you're up.
There's no new business.
Nope.
No.
I've come here to take notes. I'm on page 3 already. What's going on?
There's a lot of us here that are very good at talking. Jules, if you want to fill up some more notes.
Yeah.
Say it again, please.
There's a lot of us here that are very good at talking. If you want to fill up some more notes.
We can talk you right through the end of the yellow pad.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say that we had 2 friends about just came down. Sick as dogs for 10 days. Yep, so. First of all, I wanted to thank you very much and thank this wonderful village board. You're doing a great job, by the way. This is the first time I've been at a village board meeting in 15 or 20 years, but I used to go to every village board meeting for 30 or 35.
You've been at the State of the Village meetings.
Yeah.
Those count. Those are board meetings.
But,
You're no slouch.
it's really wonderful. When you mentioned that you want us to fix the tree on the corner of Halsey in Pennsylvania, which is the drunk driver tree, you know, when people come around, they hit it 3 times, that drunks have. And that's gonna be fixed.
I'm excited.
And the village is gonna put up $500 of the 1,850 or whatever the estimate I got from a wonderful guy, KG. Is that, we're gonna do that? We're gonna give us.
That's gonna happen, but you and I should maybe talk about that estimate later.
Okay, later.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The second thing I wanted to mention is a number of villages and towns in the Finger Lakes in this area are coming up with really wonderful statements about the Cayuga Nation issue. And I don't know if you've read them or seen them. There was two recently. And I was going to ask this wonderful village, who has several First Nations people in it, to think about the fact that this tribe, which is a wonderful old tribe, you know, part of the Iroquois, is a matriarchal tribe. And the group that's running the tribe now are really outlaws, and they burned down, you probably know that they burned down all these wonderful buildings that the matriarchal tribe was using. And so it's a state issue, but it's a national issue right now. And then the wonderful woman who's the new secretary for Indian Affairs is on it and trying to get you know, changes made so they can toss out these characters who set up this police station up on 89. I stopped in there, by the way. I'm lost.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm lost. Can you help me? And you know what they said to me? Get off the property. And I said, really? Okay, sure, I got in the car and drove. Yeah, they're not nice, but maybe a statement from in the future on the issue. Okay, the last issue, and then Patty said, Jules, you got 3 minutes on each issue because the village folks don't want this.
There's not a long line to it.
Say it again, please.
There's not a long line to it.
Okay, this is gonna sound very weird, but I'll just tell you 2 true stories. I drove a school bus here as a sub 26 years. There were 2 police officers who worked with me. One was a very nice chap, Blair Hoover, who was a state police person, and the other was Tom Perret. So the 3 of us did most of the sub work. So I'm on a Ruth Manley run, and I'm coming back from Mecklenburg. And there's one particular young man that we had talked about who is high energy, angry. His parents went through a horrible divorce. Mom left, moved to Florida, left the husband with, I think, 3 or 4 kids. So in a divorce, there's always anger. Always anger in a divorce. And I knew this kid was an angry kid. So he was having a great time. He was raising hell, and it was 8 o'clock run. So I said to him, could you please come forward? And bus drivers usually issue people right behind, you know, that's the way. So he was sitting behind me, and he and I started a little conversation. And he said to me, you know, I don't like you. And I said, you know, it really doesn't make any difference. I drive bus, I do bird calls. You know, I love to do bird calls. And just for this nice chap who's given the estimate on the tree. What's his first name?
Oh, boy. Kyle. Thank you.
Kyle, yeah, Kyle said, I remember when you used to do bird calls way back when I was in Trumansburg school. So this young man says to me, I could kill you. And I said to him, how would you do it? I mean, just tell me how you'd kill me. I'm driving the bus, going along. He was serious. I could kill you. So he said, I'd shoot you. And I said to him, really? What kind of weapons do you have on the farm where you live? And he said, I got rifles and pistols my dad has. And I said, okay, yeah. And I said to him, have you ever been in a maximum security prison? Or do you know about them? He said, no, what are they? And I told him, I said, I have been in 3 maximum security prisons. And you don't want to shoot anybody or kill anybody, you know, because they're not nice, happy places. Okay, so I reported that to Jeff Burns, superintendent, and then I talked to Ferretti about and Blair Hoover, the state trooper, and so on. And it went up the ladder into the administration at the school. And I asked Jeff Burns for feedback, you know, can we get feedback in this? I never got any feedback. He said it'll be in his record, and that's all. Okay. He killed a person in Watkins Glen. I track everybody. You know, no, I track everybody. I know lots and lots of people that I track. He killed a person. It was a fisticuffs fight, and the man that he had struck died. Okay, and then there was a second incident just below where he lives in Mecklenburg, where a man was hit by a truck at night. A man who was walking on the road, and I tracked that with the state police. And they went to this young man to see if his pickup truck, you know, was involved. There wasn't any. And I thought, well, maybe he borrowed another. But he's an angry man, and he's still there. He's taken over his dad's farm on the south side. Okay, story 1, true story. Ready for story 2? I'm the zoning officer of the village. And I loved it. I had a great time. I did it for Sylvia Potter, was the village clerk. I did it for about 5 or 6 years, I think. And I got an application for a party here in the village, had a home, and they wanted to have a gun shop. So I went to talk with them, right in the village, just on the north side. I want to have a gun shop. I want to have sell rifles and pistols and so on. So I went to them and I talked to them and said, can you tell me about the shop and its size and where it's going to be located in the house and so on. And I got all that. And I was very nice. They were very polite. So I came back and I talked to the village attorney, who was Bud Golder. And I said to Bud Golder, I think I'm going to turn this down, because I don't think people in the village of Trumansburg should be able to buy guns. And I'm the zoning officer. And he said to me, you're full, he's a really nice guy, Cornell University, educated, law school and so on. He said, you're full of S. And I said, I have been. Well, yeah, no, it's fine, sure. But he said, you can't turn it down. Because anybody who wants to have anything they want in their home, including, I'm quoting him, bazookas, or submachine guns, they can do that in the village of Trumansburg. And I said, I don't think so. So I went to the zoning board of appeals, and the zoning board of appeals turned it down. And Patty was on my lovely bride of 66 years this year, that they turned it down. I think there's part of the ordinance is there's no, I think when they voted it down, the zoning board said absolutely there is no reason to have a gun shop. I think that's in the ordinance. But I went around, I did a whole dance with Bud Golder on this, and I knew he was very conservative, very Republican, and I was way left Democrat. I ran 3 times for the county board and lost 3 times on the liberal ticket. So I mean, he and I did a whole thing. But I want to think about, and this is the last thing, and I promise I'll end it right here. I'm thinking about, and I was really saddened because Patty's from Hamburg, New York, outside of Buffalo. So this young guy from Conklin, New York, comes in, and it was a slaughter, you know, and you've read about, I've read all sorts of articles about the yeah, he really did the AK, you know, and he picked his targets out and who he was going to kill and so on. And I think that the village, the 5 of you should look at the issue in the village, because I think what happened with people, young people, zooming along, looking at Nazi propaganda, looking at these various sites, I think there's people everywhere, young people, and I think some of them who are very angry, maybe their parents have gone through a divorce, maybe the parents are ignoring them, whatever's happened, but I think there are people in this village, young people, and I think somehow, and I promise I'll stop, somehow, and I think the state police now, with the present governor, is that she's going to kick right in on what happened here. And the state police are going to be able to just take a look at all these people in New York State if they can pick up on them. The ones that are talking about Nazis and hating Jews and everything else. I mean, I think there are flags, there's red flags, they're going to have a lot of red flags. But I think we should do something about people in the village who, I was in the military police corps, up for captain when I got out, right? And I wouldn't have a gun, I wouldn't have a pistol rifle in our home ever. But there are, you know, folks who just have guns, and the neighbor next door to us, wonderful guy, Vietnam vet, his wife called me about 11 o'clock at night. This is back 35, 40 years ago. Phone rang. Hi, Patty, yeah, it's Debbie Nonkey. Called, yeah, could you come over right away? It's Debbie wants you over at the house. So I picked up the phone and said, hi, Deb, what's going on? She said, Howie's coming home. Vietnam vet, coming from a bar downtown. Sure, it's 11 o'clock at night. Do you want me to come in the house? Yeah, knock on the door right next. Hi, Jules, yeah, there's 2 guns. Yeah, one's here and one's here. One's in the bedroom, one's in the kitchen. They're loaded. I want you to take all the ammo out because he's coming in. So I waited. I said, do you want me to go home? Now they've taken the ammunition. No. She said, could you stay? Because the 4 kids are here. And I said, sure. But I thought, you know, here I am at Debbie's house, she's very lovely, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and he's gonna come home drunk, he's a good friend, I know him. But what's he gonna say? What are you doing at my house with my wife at 11 o'clock at night? You know, I mean, it did, you know, I mean, it's real, I said that to Deb, oh no. So he came around the corner, and he was drunk, and he said, hey, my old friend Jules, you know, what are you doing here at the house at 11 o'clock at night? I said, oh, I was out for a walk, Howie, and I saw the lights on and I stopped in. Well, I'm gonna tell you, you're one of the greatest guys. He picked me up off the floor. He grabbed me just like this and he lifted me right up. My feet were off the floor. And he's a good friend. He's done electrical work at our house and so on. Yeah, he's really great. But the guns, open, never kept them, never locked them, never put them away. And I think every person who has any kind of weapon like that in this village should, by village law, not state law, county law, or any other law, but village law. Yeah, in a case locked up and so on. I think there's a whole bunch of other stuff that should go on, to be honest with guns. But I think the New York State Police now, and I think it is a gun epidemic. I mean, the number, there's been 200 multiple murders in the United States of America this year. But it's something to think about. We don't think about it, you know, in the village, I don't think we, you know, you don't think about who's got the next door neighbors, you know, they have, you know, pistols and they just lying around. You just don't, but you should, you know, you should, and they should be really locked away. Anyway.
I appreciate all of those. I appreciate your words, and I actually think that the notion of the conversation of the disenchantment and beyond that, the anger and the displacement of the youth and violence is maybe something that can be discussed and just brought to attention, right? Why are some of that? And there's maybe, and I don't know if that's a LEAP's area of discussion, Keith, when you're opening with the community, but the more you talk about it, it's in people's consciousness, and maybe you start to notice angry kids that you could maybe have an effect on or keep an eye on or something. I think that's, I don't know how that fits in. That's the only conversation I know right now that's happening with the community.
It's something that we talk about in the Youth Commission a lot.
In the
right?
Youth
So
Commission.
one of the core pieces of the programming that we support as a village and that we run through Cornell Cooperative Extension is a program manager who goes in all of the schools and basically runs programming that's targeted at kids who don't fit in, maybe in sports or theater or whatever, who don't have a place to belong. In addition to obviously funding like after school programs at the library and things like that. But I think all of these systems, you know, if you talk, I would encourage you to talk to like Paul Pennick or some of the people who work in the school, who work with you know, what might be termed at-risk youth or whatever the terminology is. Because I think the story that comes out of the school, especially with youth in our community, is, I don't want to say universally, but by and large, the vast majority of students, and I can speak from personal experience because I am one of these students, came from out of the district, arrived in Trumansburg as troubled youth, and displayed that characteristic in a variety of ways. Speaking for myself, frequent visits to that side of this office. And the magic of Trumansburg, I think, however you want to term that, and I think a lot of it is through these programs that we run,
Yes.
program managers, and it's a lot of providing sort of access to adults for kids who maybe don't have that access on a frequent basis, especially adults who aren't strict or established authority figures, but really an outlet, providing those sorts of avenues for kids who would otherwise not have it, I think is something that's essential and something that we do. In my mind, there's always this sort of balance between how much do you fund a police department that will be involved in the sort of retribution and punishment of crime? How much do you fund a police department that's more proactive? And then, you know, there's sort of that spectrum, right? So there's all kinds of policing behaviors that range from, you know, imprisonment
Right,
to
peacekeeping,
community
building.
community type policing on the spectrum, and then moving further down is youth programs like the kind that we run. And I actually think that we as a board and as especially jointly with the town do a really incredible job of supporting programs like that. I think you would find if you were in school now that it's a very different atmosphere.
I bet.
Not that that's universal. I don't mean to imply that like we're in the clear or like the job is finished at all, but I think that we, in this regard, particularly do quite well as a municipal organization, as you know, obviously within the constraints that like our organizational definition provides. But I do think we do a pretty great job.
I think, yeah, no, I think, for the time that we're in, I think it's excellent. But I think it's a huge problem. I think there should be a group in the middle school, a small little group in the middle school, and elementary school, and in the high school, and they're radar people, if you want to call them that. They're actually a little group of people who just look at young people who are angry.
So I will say that our method is more of like an attraction method, right? So what you're describing to me sounds a little bit fascist, to be frank. Yeah, I mean, the observation and the surveillance to me is a little bit intrusive. So, and I shouldn't say a little bit, to me, it's a lot intrusive. I think that's, so especially with children, but then again, it's in a school. So I don't know. I mean, and also what I'm describing doesn't begin to approach the question of gun violence or guns specifically. So I don't know, it's a lot to think about, but I wanted to emphasize especially the youth program that is ongoing, because I think it's something that, I mean, I'm the youth commissioner, so I should talk about it more, but something that I don't talk about enough, that we don't talk about enough.
Sure.
Soon I'll have Keith reporting back, you know, we can talk about it together.
Yeah.
So it is.
Well, and I respect what you're saying. It's really good. I was the first chairperson of the American Civil Liberties Union, Southern New York or Central New York chapter.
Was it a cover though, Jules?
Say it again?
Was it a cover?
No,
For your surveillance and
I've been, and so I did that. I did that radar for 3 years, and we had a wonderful group, and we're down in Binghamton, Elmira, on the southern tier of Corning. It was really good. So I understand that, but I also understand that what's going on today is a very serious pathology, and the pathology was reinforced by Trump, who's a pathological billionaire liar. And he stirred an enormous amount of anger. And he's got, and I read the New York Times and Washington Post every day. He's got this enormous number of people who are roaring back in, and they're deep haters. I mean, this guy who shot the folks in Buffalo, there's people like that all over. So I think there's a fine line. I think you have to cross the line. And I've written to the chair of the ACLU, Romero, about it. You can do civil liberties, and they're really important. They're basic. The freedoms are basic to this country. All of them are basic. But when you have people who are using freedom to hate and destroy and lie, like the folks who attacked, went after all these wonderful parents who tried to survive the slaughter in Connecticut. I mean, they went after them. College professors, a college professor from Florida, a college professor from Michigan, you know, wrote to the folks in Connecticut and said, "That never happened. Yeah, your kids didn't die. Send me death certificates to prove that your kids died." You can't lie like that. You can't lie. You can't lie and hurt people. You can't lie. Two parents committed suicide in Connecticut. It's just there's a thing. But anyway, so I'm blabbering on stuff. But thanks for the opportunity. But I think there has to be some sort of a system, and the police can do it, but I think it has to be beyond the police department. There has to be some sort of a filter system who picks up on really angry young people.
I think it's us,
Say it
I
again?
think it's we the citizens, we the people with eyes, I think, and then whatever mechanisms we have to reach out. I think that's great awareness. And I don't, you know, for all of us in youth commissions or making sure events that I help promote for the village are safe and open and welcoming, and there's lots of coin tossing or something for the angry people to get their anger up. I don't know what that is, but something.
Jessica, yeah. Yeah, but I think it has to be prevention.
Yeah,
It can't be, we'll take a look at this after the incident hasn't happened and after the police are involved and the fire department's involved and so on. It has to be real solid prevention, and I don't know, it's not set up now. It is in the fire. The fire department, they're really seriously do major prevention for fires in a number of different ways. When I was a zoning officer, I wouldn't let anybody have a permit to do anything in their home if I got in. Yeah, I would say, where are the smoke alarms? So you didn't have to have smoke alarms. Yeah, no, I want smoke alarms. And when you put two fire extinguishers, yeah, here's a nice person here who sells fire extinguishers. Yeah, fire extinguishers and smoke alarms in the home.
Anyway, well,
You're
I would
good.
just say, I think to Ben's point, I think it's all about engagement. It's not necessarily you're angry, let's put you somewhere else so you can't hurt anybody.
No,
I think, everyone has the right to be angry at times. But certainly, certainly there are trends that you wanna help kids, but I think there's people smarter and more have degrees that specialize in this kind of stuff that I think are in the area. The whole schooling system is generally overwhelmed, which doesn't help, but I think these programs that Ben speaks of that I look forward to learning more about, I think are, they are, I don't know if they're a filter, but they're a way to, encourage kids to get engaged and not be loners and, find connection. And I think that's the best mechanism we probably have right now.
I think, but fear will help us run, and anger will help us stand our ground. And anger is really important as an emotion in life. It's true. But you go on the Richter scale of anger, what I do with people is I assess and see what their anger level is. So you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's different kind of categories of anger. And then you get to 10. And when you get to 10, you're in rage. And when you're in rage, a person who's in rage, and they can be very calm about it, or they can be, doesn't matter, they can go any way. But when they're in rage, they're unpredictable. And this kid shot these people in Buffalo as well as the kid who shot the folks in Connecticut, as well as shot the folks in San Antonio as well. They were way over the top in terms of their internal rage. And I think it's possible to pick up people who have a real serious problem with anger. I think it's possible to identify them and then and help them. Way like tell Patty.
Talk about rage.
Anyway, thank you.
yeah.
Thanks, Jules.
All right, before we go into executive session, I would like to just take a moment to thank Trustee Giles for her time in service on this board, as this will be her last meeting before moving on to her new role with the village. So thank you not only for your time here, but for your time on the planning board, and as its chair during a particularly interesting time. I would say you'll be missed, but we'll see you out every day.
Yeah,
But you'll be missed on this board for sure.
thank you. I appreciate that. Appreciate my time here. And thanks to the good people who put me here, and I look forward to serving them in a new capacity.
And us.
Oh, yeah.
Well, about
Is this my lame duck
Yes.
meeting?
that.
As I take flight.
That's not a lame duck, that's a very motivated duck.
So I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss.
Could I say one thing first before, which maybe you covered, Gordon, but the banners are ordered for
Good.
150th. And I have no reason to expect that they won't be on target. And thank you for coordinating with Dusty to get them home. If the timeline shifts, I will make sure that you know. printed materials have come out for Porch Fest, with the flip side celebrating Friday Historical Society play, which 2 of us will be in.
Few of us.
I'm gonna be in the audience. I have two lines to say as mother.
Oh,
Yeah.
add to the script.
Sandy couldn't do it,
Oh,
so, and then also the games, so,
Chief Nelson will be participating as well.
I saw, yeah, also the games on Sunday, so that there's handbills that will be passed out, and you might start to see in storefronts and posters, so I think that that's really great. We should decide, and I just put it in the Dropbox, so my apologies, if we wanna do radio spots, it's like $630 for 2 weeks of radio spots to highlight. Porch Fest is already gonna be promoting, we're linked to it, I'm disinclined to spend money on advertisement, but I didn't know.
What radio, equivalent on radio spots for this?
I
particular purpose?
tend to agree,
You're
right? Because it's
ambivalent.
village that we really want to attract. I don't know that
Well, we do kind of want to attract people to come to. It's a tourism and engagement event, and the village is also really the town, right? So people who live in Ulysses say they live in Trumansburg, but I feel like it's gonna happen. I would rather spend that money on something later.
I might just counter with, you might get a lot more, I haven't done it in a while, but I think you might get more bang for your buck with like a Facebook ad campaign.
Which is happening, see,
Oh, it is
yeah,
already-
this stuff is already happening, because it was offered, and Jen Demarest on ETC did a really good job getting all the details and the potentialities for different radio spots. I wanted to make sure that we knew, we mentioned it last, but I'm not hearing any. Yeah, great, good, that's it.
Yeah, I think we can spend that money somewhere else.
Yeah, and did you say that there was a great fire company banquet to which we got to attend, and the
Didn't mention it.
slate of officers, Vern swore in the new slate of officers, which I'd already read out loud, and a tremendous amount of service awards were given out for people 18 and 30 years of service with the fire company, so again, fire company, and it was asked of me by one of the visiting dignitaries who paid for the banquet, and I said, it is fire company money. If it were the village, it'd likely be a potluck at the farmer's market. So no tax dollars went there, but it was a pleasant time, and they did invite area fire companies to attend, and they came, so that was a really neat thing. And the chamber is supporting Porch Fest as well, and helping to garner sponsorship for the Sim Redmond band that's playing at 5 o'clock with Union Street closed. So I think that's all the stuff I wanted to say. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes, fire company banquet this Saturday night was very nice.
I will mention one last thing too, is that there's a draft of the newsletter to take a look at in everyone's inbox. I think I now have it maybe after the 3rd time tuned in, but give it a look, see if there's anything you've got feedback on.
Quick glance looked awesome with the layout. I like
I'm
it's very touching.
quite happy with the way it came
Yeah.
together, so.
Yeah, I think it looks good. What kind of numbers are you thinking to print?
I didn't have one. I think we had thrown around like 100 to start. I'm happy to start small and, see how it takes. And if we want to print more, it's easy enough to add from the round. I don't expect them to be hopefully too expensive. My thought is to print them. I think this is how you mentioned before, is like a 11 by 17, just fold it in half. That's very good.
I think for the, we would probably, and I'm guessing, but I expect you'll find that the cost, it might be cost effective just to get, say, 500. You're
That's potential.
probably not gonna pay a whole lot more for 500 than 100
Yeah,
because of the setup charge.
I thought it could go quick too. That's just a ream of paper.
yeah. Well, I'm happy to work, maybe Tammy, I can work with you on print, on how much pricing for printing when we get to that point, maybe next week.
Yeah, that's fine. I have another job that's going to Word Pro probably Wednesday morning, the annual water quality report. So if we could time those together, then it means only one trip to the print shop for me coming into work.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, I mean, I think I'd ask folks to try and get back to me by the end of the week, or, early in the weekend, so I have the time to make any adjustments, and I'll try and get it to you early in the week, next week.
Okay, yeah, I'll just send them a PDF and they'll quote it pretty
Okay.
quickly.
Great.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a couple of personnel items as well as negotiations subject to the Taylor law.
So.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.